So welcome to the Open NAMAE webinar, National Association for Media Arts Education. Welcome. We're here to support and advance media arts education for all learners. It's October 10th. And we have a special webinar tonight, conversation with Dr. Camille Dempsey from PennWest University. Welcome, Camille. She is working on a camera, and we hope that we can see her at some point. If not, you're just gonna have to use your imagination.
I was going to say, this is kind of a first. I'm usually able to get it all figured out. But the other thing I thought was I could throw a picture up on one of the slides. But yeah, we might need to use our imaginations for a little while. And I know this group will do a great job with that.
Absolutely.
And there was a question about closed captioning, and you have access to enable the captioning. I think that each person, you can enable it in whatever language you want to. And if you click on more, you should see captions, and then you can choose your language there.
Okay, so we're going to start with a little bit of introduction. And for introductions for the whole webinar, we always have attendees chat your title, organization, and state, please. So we know everybody that's in the room. It's a way of taking attendance as well. And during this event, we will have opportunities for people to talk and so forth. We'll share that with you in a bit, what the format of the discussion will be. But this is a National Association meeting and webinar, so we do give some updates from the association to begin, which I'll start with those right now. The first one being the Arts Education Alliance, AEA, which was newly formed just a month ago, really, between the 5 arts education organizations, dance, music, theater, visual arts, and ourselves as national arts education organizations have aligned and are working together collaboratively to advance federal policy for arts education. And so we're really excited by this event that came out of this advocacy, really, which was a clarification letter, or Dear Colleague letter, it's called, from the Department of Education, explaining that all of these funds from the federal level are totally available to arts education, arts educators. And so we'll be going through a period here of promoting that, getting the word out, and then beginning to give advice for how educators would access those funds, why they would use them, how to do it, how to advocate for your program, and what those monies can be used for. So that's a great move forward for this new arts education organization. And then we are in parity with the arts organizations. We are a national association. And so we are working with them also through the National Coalition for Arts Standards, which is a separate coalition organization. A number of other partners are involved in that. And that is specifically about developing standards. So that's other work that we're involved in at the national level. So great, something to celebrate there for all of the arts, and media arts is now included in that. They can access these funds for their rooms, for professional development, for equipment, and so forth. All right, so the next point here is we have state progress now on our website for states that have reported on that from their state leaders in arts education. It'd be a coordinator or director somehow of arts education at the Department of Education in the state. And so you see a number of states that are represented there, and language answering as to where media arts is in progress in the state. And I just want to report here something very important. And A major development is that Utah is the first state that we can really say for sure is fully established with media arts. So specifically, they have an endorsement, they have course codes, those are connected, that makes it real. And it develops this constituency of credentialed teachers. So we have these credentialed teachers in Utah, and they have their courses. And that's something that's not really true in any other state to that degree. So, but other states have that possibility. They're working on it, and looks like they may be moving that way. You can see that progress within that spreadsheet, and it's on the support subpage. So you go to support on our website and click on the subpage for state progress. Also, another point that we've been working towards, and you would see that in the notifications I've been sending out, is that we are going to have a grassroots fundraiser. We have been having a grassroots fundraiser from when we first became a nonprofit in that status as a fiscal sponsoree, or in sponsorship, as it would be called. And that's been quite a while now that we had that status, and people have been able to donate. So we have gotten very few donations, but they're kind of keeping us together and our expenses. But we need to really fund more if we want to do more work. So if you are supportive of this work, if you want it to continue, if you want it to grow, if you want us to achieve our goals here as a national nonprofit for media arts education, we need your input. It's going to be a survey that comes into that. So that's very important. And then we also need your contributions. And we need your involvement. We need you to sign up for committees and to be a part of this and participate. So throughout the webinar, we'll be asking you to post questions, comments in chat anytime you would like. So continue that process. We'll try to keep an eye on that. And this is the format of the discussion tonight, is that for a few minutes, Camille will be speaking generally about the state of AI. And then I'll be talking a little bit about impacts of media arts on the media arts industry and with artistry. And then we'll have some questions and answer for a few minutes there. And then we'll get into education, and Camille will talk about AI in education in general. And then she and I will be talking about media arts education and impacts and possibilities for AI there. And then we'll end with 15 minutes of Q&A. So in those portions when we're talking, you can continue to put things into the chat, questions, comments, etc. So, and then we'll try to address those at some point. Hopefully we'll get through this fully and be able to speak to all these points. If not, there's always the possibility of having a part B in the future. So we'll see how far we can get. And we just want to have a quality conversation and have everybody sort of on the same page in terms of this relationship between art, media arts education and artificial intelligence. With that, I want to talk to the foundational definition and point of view of media arts education. This comes from my book. So my book has been published recently, October 1st, and I've been working on that for over a decade, about 13 years. And these are major points in the book. There are things that I've been describing more and more. And I think at this point, you know, they're going to be sort of core to who we are, particularly in talking about artificial intelligence. It's very important that we understand what media arts education is about, how it's defined specifically, what are the tools, what are the basic principles of media arts education, what defines it as a discipline, what distinguishes it, what are its possibilities specifically, and how do those compare with AI, the compare and contrast, what's the Venn diagram, that sort of thing. So I will be referencing my book because that's basically a lot of what I know about media arts education put into a document of research. And so it does provide us a touchstone, something that we can all look at, agree with some aspects, maybe argue over others. So it's a point of reference. And in this case, I'll start to describe what these principles about media arts education are. So for example, a definition of media arts education in the book is that it is creative, multimodal, machine-based manipulation of aesthetic phenomena, okay? And resulting in these multimodal forms: photo, video, sound, animation, interactive. XR is really virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, these spatial forms, as they call them, or immersive forms that are developing. And then artificial intelligence fits within that category. It is a media arts form. So clearly we can use it to produce multimedia, different forms of media. Now, media arts education is also, as defined in the book, as the basis of our multimodal communications. This is our society, right? This is how we communicate now. It's our design forms, it's our virtuality. This is something that Dr. Dempsey is particularly knowledgeable about, is the notion of virtuality. And then interactivity, which are central to our societal understanding and functioning. So that's very important to keep in mind as we go through this conversation. The next thing is that I assert and have been asserting that artificial intelligence needs the complement of media arts education within the education system because media arts education is embodied. And that is a distinction from artificial intelligence. It is not embodied, it's disembodied, it's artificial, it's synthetic. Yeah. Also, media arts education has a social component and it's project-based. So those are very important to keep in mind as we have this conversation. So actually, I'm going to leave it here on this slide and have Dr. Dempsey please share with us your general overview of the state of artificial intelligence.
Sure. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm so sorry. I was having some technical issues and I'm still having issues with my camera, but there's a picture there as a placeholder. I thought maybe what I would do, Dain, if it's okay, is just share a few slides,
Yep.
if that would be okay with you. Let
Absolutely.
me just pull them up very quickly. And yes, I'd be happy to share that. Okay. Okay. So I think the first thing I would say is that there's certainly a lot going on in the world with AI, and it's something that's really creating some not only possibilities but also challenges within thinking about media arts. And so I put together just some pictures to show you. This last May. I am a Google ambassador, and so I go. Represent an organization called Women Tech Makers. And it's really one of these places that I wish more different media artists would attend, because when you get on the ground with the Googlers and all these sort of AI engineers and so forth, I don't know, I realized really quickly how much media is really involved in a lot of the work that they do. And so at this Google I/O, they unveiled a lot of updates as far as things that were going on, and not surprising, a lot of them were in the arts areas, and I think that's worth mentioning. I don't know that they really mentioned the arts explicitly. I don't know if Dain mentioned, but my background is in visual art. I was a teacher, and I've also been an artist. And so I'm always listening to see, sort of see if they're included. And I feel like maybe in my own past and working in the arts, I almost feel like a lot of times we're sort of last. And yet here we are at Google, and many things are being done to be multimodal and sort of exciting. The other thing I would say about, thinking about the state of AI is, sort of acknowledging the fact that this is the 35th birthday of the internet. And I think about like, what did the internet make possible for us as artists, but also what are the challenges that it's brought? And then now that we're in sort of this age of AI, and things are accelerating beyond what I think any one of us can control, it just sort of blows my mind. And one of the announcements they made in May, and I think this is really profound when we think about the state of where AI is that by the end of this year, Google will be Googling for us. And a lot of that is due to pressure with a lot of these AI tools and chatbots and things that personalize our searching. I know I had a student this past week, one of my undergrads actually came to me and said, have you seen this, Dr. Dempsey? What you're talking about is in my phone. Like I can Google something and it'll do it for me. And so we looked at it and I thought, well, first of all, I don't know why I don't have the feature. So I'm going to have to dig into that, which I find a lot of, AI is forcing us all to move fast, whether we want to or not. But the other thing I want to say is, I think when we think about where we are with AI, it's really important to think about sort of a cultural framework to understand sort of our value, not only as humans, but thinking about the history of the arts and sort of where that's all evolved from. So my work in virtuality culture picks up where Walter Ong left off, and his work is really about these ideas of thinking about the ways that we make meaning, not only in the arts, but in many areas, right? And so I see AI as a form or is a manifestation of virtuality culture, but it relies on, the powerful thing is it relies on literacy orality, artistic expression, mindfulness, a lot of these things that we need as humans. And I think that's a really important thing to sort of point out. This is just a real quick timeline. I know, that there's a lot more I could say about it, but, when we think about the power of the visual and auditory and some of the things, this technology residue, things that, have come from this cultural evolution, AI, I think about like, it's been around a long time, since the 50s, or early 50s. And it's based on code. It's based on all these things that make up what we already know in the arts. We think about language and, for me, I started out in painting. So for me, the tool became the paintbrush and the paint. And then, of course, things evolved and I started using more virtual modes. So I think I'm going to stop there, Dain. I mean, I would say that, the state of AI is that I think people are either really panicked or they're on the other end, which is like, I'm not doing this. I'm going to wait. I'm just going to retire and I won't have to like teach with this. I won't have to deal with this. And then there's some of us in the middle that are saying, okay, some of this, I don't know how I feel about some of this. I'm also very concerned about some of this. And I can speak very passionately about this. Like I have concerns around privacy. I think with the state of AI and the way that our data is being used to train different models. I think, as artists, we're used to asking questions, but we definitely need to keep asking questions about that. And we also need to ask questions about policy, because it's very much like the wild, wild west right now. So the policy is just, it just kind of depends on who you ask, right? And we know in the arts that sometimes constraint can create, more creative approaches to something. But certain things, I think, really do need to be regulated when it comes to safety, AI safety, and thinking about ethical AI. So just to kind of kick us off, Dain, those are a few things I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Great. So yeah, let me get back to this presentation and moving into those impacts, as we know, it is the Wild West. So the decision making is happening in this very explosive way, in the sense that every aspect of our society is now infusing this within its organization, within its systems, considering how to deploy it, how to take advantage of it, how to use it. So it does feel very much like a race, and it's been described to me that way by AI professionals, that it is a race. And so in some ways, we don't have decisions that we can make. It's out of the box. We're not going to put it back in the box. The question is, how do we regulate it? Are we just going to be chasing it? That sort of thing. We do have to deal with it. So within our own systems, we need to really understand its impacts, and then how would we best wisely adjudicate those, ameliorate those, remedy them, work with it, take advantage of it, use it for the best purposes.
And Dain, Dawn just mentioned in the chat that another impact is the environmental cost of AI. And she added a couple of links there, just letting you all know.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredibly important, and is not brought up enough. It's already impacting our grids. People are in Ohio are having to think about how are they going to increase their grid capacity to the degree AI requires, and it is kind of limitless now, the demand. So it'll push to whatever we provided, it would seem. So we'll have to keep watching that, and it does curtail our progress towards climate change adjustments and goals to reduce that CO2 emissions. So here the statistics are pretty dramatic. 72% are early adopters within the media industry, and there's already jobs reduction happening. There are new jobs forming. And a larger role will be taking place, and jobs are being disrupted. But there are other benefits as well, and concerns. So in ethics, of course, copyright battle is continuing, and these developers are being sued in a number of levels from different organizations in order to keep their rights and maintain those rights over time. We'll have to see how that works out. It's hard to know or guess or predict. And of course, there are the issues of bias that are sort of already cooked into it, and to what degree those can be amended. There's veracity. We're encountering all kinds of information now that could be AI generated and spread, and it's hard for people to determine what's real in that, what's not. Those are major issues in our society now, is the definition of what's real. So this consensus that we have is really going to be continuing to cause problems until we have really powerful modes of literacy within education. So, and education tends not to be presented as a solution in these often. It's usually legal positions from top down, that sort of thing, rather than how we do preventive measures within education. And then, of course, hallucinations and errors being a continuing ongoing problem. On the other hand, those who have used AI have increased their creativity and productivity and the sophistication in marketing. So at this point, we can take some questions if there are any before we move into the next issue, which would be education. So do we have any questions in the chat, Barbara, or?
I haven't seen any, but please raise your hand if you have something you want to discuss. We'll take the first come, first serve, or post it in the chat. Not seeing anything, so perhaps we
Camille, you can go ahead and take the lead there and begin to talk about in education, what role is AI having in education? How is it being developed for education? And you're welcome to share your own screen as well, of course.
Yeah, thank you, Dain. I think I'll just speak to this on this slide rather than jump around. One of the areas in education I think that's interesting to look at is if anyone here has heard of ISTE, which is the International Society for Technology and Education. They have a lot of arts educators involved with that organization. I know I'm very involved as a community leader, but also more recently have been serving as an AI fellow with ISTE. And so some of the most interesting work with students and teachers have happened through that initiative. And so they have what's called, it's called the ISTE Explorations for K-12, which has really been interesting watching what students and teachers are both doing. So one of the things I would suggest, and it's pretty easy to find if you Google capstone projects, ISTE AI, they have posted many of their student projects. So, you find everything from students creating chatbots with their teachers in the classroom to even some other things that are more directly related to media arts. I think one of the things I noted when I was doing faculty work for them, and of course, these are teachers in many different areas, that the difference between the teachers who were in, media arts areas or digital arts or, whatever we want to refer to it as, their work was much more focused on some of the critical things around AI, where a lot of the generalists were focused on, like, let's just use these AI image generators to, almost replace the human and their creativity. So I know when I was a faculty member, I kept challenging them to think through, and Dain, you and I talked about this the other night, the idea that when we create something in the arts, there's different versions of something that we create, and there's different ways in which we interact with media that's different than just clicking a button and asking AI to do this thing. But a lot of like I said, the examples, I would say the best examples for what are happening internationally are there. But there's certainly, right now, K-12 is blowing up over, with AI. And it's really a time where we need a lot of, mindful teachers, artists, people asking questions, pushing, as things are pushing forward with AI, sort of pushing the questions around, should we, how do we do it? When we prompt engineer something, how do we get the best outputs? I know one of the things that I've been thinking about and trying it with my own students, because so many fields refer to, AI hallucinations or making things up as this bad thing. And it occurred to me that, we do this in the arts. we do things that are different than conventions. And so I took on the idea of an AI hallucination as a potential source of creative information. And I did a presentation on it, actually. So what happens when we intentionally prompt AI to get something, that's incorrect, and then we play with that as, an idea for how we manipulate it further. So, but certainly there are so many ways that teachers are using it. I mean, literacy, just to give you sort of an example, because the nature of writing, the nature of reading, everything is shifting, with virtuality culture. And so there's much more conversation, I think, in media around the ethics of how should we be using this technology? When should we be using the technology? So, when is it appropriate to introduce children to, AI tools? Is it appropriate? What happens if we do that or we don't? And then, the idea that, some places don't even have policy. Our own governments just recently started to create more, specific parameters. And certainly if we look at UNESCO, there's, some world organizations that have really put some things in place, which is what I follow when I look at things. But so when I'm out working with teachers, I tell them that, like, have you looked at UNESCO's, different areas within their policy for, judging what you do? And I very much think school districts are behind. And I very much think in education, we're playing catch up. I mean, AI, when I think about, and I know we talked a little bit about this before, about the state of AI. We know that the military, corporate America, a lot of these entities are much farther ahead, and we play catch up in education. But there's lots of things that are positives. The idea that we now have personalization and the ability to differentiate for different learners. And there is some research and some things happening around, what happens when they're using agents or AI assistants and tutors. So tools like Conmigo, there is active research being done. That's part of Khan Academy. And I recently listened to a demo about Conmigo and was impressed by the fact that the tool didn't give the student the answer. It coached them through the understanding of a concept. And that part of it, I was really impressed by. And I'd like to see more tools that are doing that. Teachers are certainly jumping into using tools like Magic School AI, Curipod, some of these school AI to design their lessons and their assessments and their rubrics. And one of the things I said recently in a professional development workshop is, wouldn't it be nice if you could have more time to do more mindful things with your students? And, so if you could replace something that you normally do that you really wouldn't miss, what would it be? And many of them said lesson planning and assessments. That if AI could help us with that and free up our time so we could do more with artistic processes and working with kids and, that kind of a thing. And I thought that was really interesting. And, we know that there are disadvantages as well. And there were a couple of really important points in the chat I just noted and had heard. There is this idea that I'm always concerned about, balance, media balance. And, are we working with media, too much? I mean, as far as AI is concerned and screens and all this sort of thing. Yeah. And also I know Dain and I talked about this as well. Is it by jumping into a lot of the AI tools, like the image generated tools, are we reducing our sort of human imagination to kind of figure some things out ourselves? And I know I tell my students that your human brain is incredibly important. And don't outsource your creativity. Don't outsource the good stuff. And I think that's incredibly important in this area, that as humans, I mean, my goodness, civilizations have been built on what we do as artists and, as far as culture is concerned. So, but, there's the critical thinking piece, can also be an issue. Although I will say some of the things I've tried with students have actually increased some of their critical thinking with AI, particularly in the area of writing, where we're using it as a coach rather than a replacement for, the ways in which we write something traditionally. So, I mean, those are a few ideas. There's so much to this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great overview, though, of how it's taking place in education. And we are hearing things that are very kind of exuberant in terms of the aspirations for how it could transform education, really personalize it, allow that student to advance on their own to some degree, give a lot of scaffolding in their work. So it's the tutoring aspects, the creativity aspects, going through sophisticated processes as a collaborator, that sort of thing. And then, of course, facilitating the instruction, the differentiation is huge. And so that suddenly differentiation is like conceivable now. Whereas before it was like, okay, everybody's doing differentiation for everyone, right? And that's very difficult to do, as you know, in these classrooms that are very diverse in terms of the levels of learners. So this was just a little bit more information in that regard for the media arts industry, a little more detail there in terms of the benefits and the risks. So just point out a couple of the benefits. It enhances the creativity, handling repetitive tasks, these production tasks, experimentation. Then there are the risks of taking over these traditional roles, privacy, copyright, etc. And compromising artistic originality. I think we're getting into that. So that brings us to the next slide where media arts education, in a sense, you can imagine that one wonders, like I expressed to my cousin, he's a businessman. He doesn't really understand, arts or arts education, that sort of thing. And for media arts, he's like, why are you teaching that? AI does that now. You're writing a book about it. You don't need that anymore, which one could conjecture, why teach those things? And so we do need to really define what media arts education is, get to know it thoroughly. And as Camille was saying there, what do we risk in not using these things? So we need to think about what these cognitive processes are, how valuable they are, and how to preserve them, how to continue them when the temptation will be to skip over any difficult processes, challenging processes, as we are seeing plagiarism happening or AI produce papers. I'm hearing complaints by English teachers. That's all they do is they act as gatekeepers now, and they're just figuring out what's real and what's fake. And they're just like, my job is ruined. It's like no fun at all. That's all I'm doing is waving flags and things. So in that sense, we justify ourselves. Can we justify ourselves? I would say we do. We're a bit different than the media arts industry. I think, that's going to have its own challenges because at some level, yeah, machines can replace some of this very formulaic commercial work that it's been trained on, right? What it can't do is the creative aspects that take those to another level, or they achieve a certain intent, which might be unusual. So AI falters when it comes to very sophisticated concepts, both within kind of conceptual ideas as well as in media production. So that's the necessity that we need to continue things and that we fight for in education. Education needs to fulfill higher purposes. And to some degree, we've had kind of a limited form of education. We've all been complaining about it for a century, that it is based on a factory model, that it is cookie cutter, that it's top down, that it's regimented, that it's one size fits all, that it's pretty narrow cognitively. It's very text-based, very content-based. It's a lot of memorization, and that is driven by testing. And then there is the embodiment aspects that media arts could present as a form of project-based learning that integrates with that. That's the substance of my book, is really that argument. It's not particularly media arts and making movies is what it's all about. It's that this can integrate with the core subjects, and it's a way by which they can make this material more accessible to students, more malleable, more hands-on. It essentially aestheticizes the core content. So I can take that idea, say, of global warming, and then I can illustrate it. I can act it out in a theatrical way, a dramatic way. I can do a dance or expression about it. I can make music that expresses my understanding of that. Or I can combine all those in a media arts project where the sound and the images explain what global warming is and how I feel about it and what we should do about it. So that's the argument of the book. And that it presents these things, multimodal communications, design, virtuality, interactivity are central to our society, to our understanding and our functioning. These are media arts forms that conduct this. So it is how we perceive our world, it's how we interact with our world, it's how we talk to our world, it's how we express and communicate to others. And this is going on as our society, this is our digital society, right? Is presented to us in these formats. So media arts education provides these things that are central to our society. AI doesn't really organize that kind of material. It's really at a baseline in terms of directly working with the student and correcting their understanding. You know, that's really where it functions well. And then it can assist certain processes. So I did a professional development where I explained media arts and how you produce something. And to produce something about a topic, you have to empathize with the topic, and you have to empathize it through images and sounds and a sequence of explanation, a narrative, that sort of thing. And you have to brainstorm. You have to go through this process of organizing it. You have to storyboard it. And so we're describing these processes. And this teacher that was really intent on using AI, I mean, he's very much an ed tech kind of focused teacher, said, I can do this in my classroom. It's great. Look. And she showed me that just with an AI prompt, they could bypass the whole production process and they could just have it organized for them. They could have the script, they could have the storyboard, all of that was done. And I was like, aghast. I was like, but that's the process of empathy that we need to develop, you know, and being able to imagine, envision, go through a project with others, collaborate, do something, decide on it together, strategize how we're going to do it, organize that, what are the logistics, everything that we need to do to accomplish this project. So all of that is embodied. It's very holistic in that it encompasses all aesthetics within media arts through all of the different arts disciplines that are incorporated. It is that empathy. It's the deep meaning of your expression and the meaning that you get out of the purpose of this product and how it conveys to people what you what you gave to them. So students are put in this very active role and a leadership role and an assertive role. So they gain this confidence in having produced that, you know, they've done something really very important there and said it to other people. This is the basis of our arts, aesthetics, and then it is project-based, it's collaborative, and it connects with the community. It's very social. These are things that AI is not really conducting or doing. And so where AI is coming into school and it's making the factory system work in a way that it did not for a century, you know, personalizing for various students, that's great. What happens if all the students are now doing well on their tests and the test scores are up? You know, and they're really just focused on perfecting that, you know, and there's nothing larger that comes out of it. The idea being, well, if you have these basic supports for instruction that are working, that means that you could possibly move all instruction to a higher order. It's almost like you can offload that basic instruction to AI, and therefore we can do these kinds of projects that are more involved, that utilize those core subjects to some purpose in more experiential ways, so that we are applying the content, we're applying it in a variety of ways, and therefore we're sort of transferring it to different situations which is what really embeds that within their thinking and their understanding. Let's see. The other things that media arts brings are that it's transdisciplinary, that it connects the arts and also other contents, and allows this translation of the content through multimedia, which you are translating in different modes, and therefore you're understanding it through visuals, through sounds, through those combinations, and through these different forms of immersive productions, as well as the various media, but also like three-dimensional models, interactive models that they may make about some biological process, or like say how a cell functions, understanding how those parts work. If they can play with that kind of three-dimensional model and construct it to some degree, it really deepens the learning. This gives more students more opportunities, more ways by which they can master that curriculum, and it makes it more inclusive in how they can demonstrate their understanding. And you don't need standardized tests as much because more students can now demonstrate it through these types of activities where they make it real. In AI production there at the bottom, does AI replace the above just by a prompt? And you bypass that whole process. Are people going to really appreciate what they're losing when we're trying to sell media arts as a subject area, and now we're sort of competing with computer science and AI, and they're like, no, we want AI because it's working, you know, and it can solve these problems. We see that it's already operating. Therefore, we don't see the need for the arts. We don't see the need for media arts because it's so new. We don't even really understand what it is for. And then we can think about AI production and how it can be used in media arts education, you know, to generate photos, illustrations, graphics, if we need those. Those are things that, you know, through copyright and so forth are somewhat questionable whether we can use those in student productions. To what degree can they produce their own kinds of stock and royalty-free images and sounds? They can assist with project generation, that sort of thing, but they can also assist with this complex organization of the school system if we bring it to this higher order where students are like doing more projects that are sort of outside the norm, outside of the convention. We need ways by which we can understand their holistic development and organize different situations where they can do project-based learning. They're mastering the core concepts, but they're also gaining a lot of high-order competencies. With that, I'm going to stop and then open up to Camille. If you want to respond to that, we can start talking back and forth, and then we'll entertain questions as well.
Yeah, I think you made a lot of really great points, and this slide is on point. One of the things I was thinking about, and I wanted to actually ask the group what your thoughts were about this idea, that I just talked to one of the ISTE organizers, and again, that's the International Society for Technology and Education, and they will be moving forward with new initiatives focused on students as AI creators. And so when we think about what it means culturally for every student to have an AI agent, thought partner, tutor, whatever, however we want to refer to it, co-pilot, that's the other term that I've heard. You know, it's like, what does that mean? And what is the purpose of that, you know, that AI partner? And not only do students have, you know, access to these things and thinking about creating things with AI, but teachers do as well. And I think about, what does this mean as a media artist to have access to, and it's sort of profound, to have access to a thought partner, which is an AI assistant 24/7. It's sort of an interesting thought, you know, that as a lot of us, I don't know, I studied at the oldest art school in the country at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, and everything was very much old school, old traditional, arts kinds of things. So the idea that, technology in contemporary form could potentially, that I could have a chat bot while I'm painting to help me somehow, that would have been a revelation, way back when, and sort of scary, but also strangely exciting that, maybe there's some new possibilities there. But I also think I agree with what you said, Dain, about, human creativity, empathy, these things can't be replicated by AI, at least not in a meaningful, artistic sort of way. But what I would say as a caveat that we all need to be, thinking about is that now prompt engineering has become a new writing form, right? And we all have to be sophisticated in our prompt engineering skills. I don't love the term prompt engineering. I don't think that's what it is. I know someone somewhere in a technology company came up with that, who was probably an engineer. But I certainly think that it's powerful to be able to write a prompt that generates this capability or this possibility, for something that we do creatively. And I have had some experiences where I've prompted some things that, imagine that you're an artist from the 1500s and you want to know what they think about AI, or there is this potential for, creativity. And remember, AI is predictive, and it predicts things based on the data that it's been fed. So again, it's not something to be a replacement, but we're naive if we don't think that we already have assistants, AI assistants. We're using them every time we turn our phone on. So I think we have to figure out a way to work with kids, teachers, artists, so that they do maintain their creativity, right? But that we leverage these tools in meaningful and mindful ways. I guess that's what I would say in response. Yeah.
So, audience, are there any ideas, thoughts, questions?
I've been adding notes and links into the chat, and feel free to kind of peruse those notes and links as you think about this wonderful topic.
Well, we have a few more minutes. Camille, as this progresses, I mean, can you see a long-term, have you had any ideas in terms of the long-term development of AI, or when they suggest things like a companion that is with that child constantly, is that what they're saying? Like 24/7, really?
Oh yeah. I mean, think about, we used to debate what age should children have cell phones or mobile devices, right? And
Right.
we know that's younger and younger. And we know that kids aren't prepared for the worlds in which, they're in those devices. Because we have challenges with parents knowing how to set parental controls and all these kinds of things. So if we think about AI as an extension of, ourselves and the things that we can do, absolutely. I mean, I think if there's a tool that exists, the other day, one of my students said, or actually she asked me this question and then they were talking about it in class, Dr. Dempsey, if ChatGPT can calculate a math problem, why do we still have math problems in our math class? And we had a great conversation about it. And I think it's parallel. We could have the same conversation with the arts. Like I could see a great question being, if we can use Adobe Firefly or Stable Diffusion to create a work of art, why would we need to do that by hand? And yet we all know that the processes involved in creating a work of art or doing math or writing, that those human processes are incredibly important. And since AI is automating so many of these things, I worry that we somehow we lose that. And I think so using the agent, I think there's some best practices, that we have when we're working with children and maybe not children. I don't know that I want a young child using AI. I mean, we barely know what we're doing, but I mean, high school students, for example, I would want there to be some conversations around the why and why are we choosing to use, for example, an image generator as opposed to something else? And I know I've had some luck with more authentic kinds of in fact, I'm working on a book right now. It's fairy tales about AI, once upon a chatbot, fairy tales about AI. And I've been conflicted about the arts process. I feel like, okay, here I am, I'm talking about AI everywhere I go. And yet I'm coming from a very traditional art background. And I've been working through myself, like a new process for considering my, things that are hand created, but then using AI as an assistant. And I'm struggling, I'm having philosophical challenges with that. And all I know is that when I struggle, and I know I tell my students this, I tend to work through that dissonance, until I get to that other side. And with this, I'm not sure I ever will. But I know eventually, if we don't work with students on these processes and showing them, not just telling them why they're important, instead of just clicking a button to have AI create it for them, I do worry about our brains. I worry, how are we evolving? Are we de-evolving in some way? And are we giving too much of who we are to machines? I guess I worry about that as well.
Yeah, I worry about that too. The immediate impulse is to race ahead, right? Without considering these deep philosophical issues. We are the generation that will have these thoughts only because we know what's behind us. And then if a child is growing up with an AI companion, that is completely and totally embedded within their brain, not even considering how that AI is going to evolve while the child perhaps does not, you know? And that just seems really out there experimentally to me. We're just, which in a sense you can say social media was a kind of experiment. And
Right.
how would we have done it differently if we knew today what we knew at the beginning?
Right.
That's
Right.
where we are with AI, is
Right.
not knowing what this coevolution is going to be. What decisions are some people going to make that will be absolutely the wrong decision?
I
That
agree.
might be one of them, in my
Yeah.
estimation, is don't give the phone to the kid when they're a baby and don't take it away ever.
Right. No, I agree. I agree. Yeah, and there's no one right answer, I think, with AI and the arts. There's so much gray. There's so much gray. And I know a really neat site to check out if anyone's interested in looking at how different media artists are exploring AI is a site called aiartist.org. And I'll tell you, there are some really provocative things happening, with those examples. So I did want to throw that out.
aiartist.org. I think I'm
Yeah, it's
looking
it's
that
pretty.
up.
Yep,
Yeah, and I had a number of
that's okay. Yeah, there's a little
this was
link.
it.
Yeah, that it's
So I
pretty
had a number
crazy.
of these artists, May McGregor, British choreographer,
Right. Yeah,
Spencer
I can tell. I haven't even seen
Simmons.
his work, but I can tell he's using Google's. Oh yeah, this is Dr. Joy is very good. She's all about the um, algorithmic justice and black faces being detected by AI, which has been a problem with AI. So
Okay.
then people are mistakenly, they're arrested for crimes they didn't commit. There's a lot of things with I mean, a lot of these issues are huge that they're exploring.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting work here, and it is, it would be great to be able to study these different artists and see what they are finding out. This is valid research that's going on here that needs to be incorporated in the whole holistic conversation of AI, right?
Yes.
I demand that there is a holistic conversation where
Yes.
the impetus is not to have, or not even to consider what holistic is, because it's
Right.
a
Right.
scientific term. Um,
Yeah, they're really incredible. Some of these, actually, all of them have a different perspective, and it's. I love the critical lens. I mean, who else do we look at, rather than artists to give us this hope about, humanity and what we need to be exploring with this. It's huge.
yeah, a different perspective is necessary for sure. All right, people, that does bring us to the end of our hour. So I do want to thank everybody for being here, and give us some feedback. Send me a note, if you would. I hope you have my email. And let us know what you thought of tonight, and perhaps some ideas for how we continue this conversation, or some thoughts you had about this particular webinar. We are looking at developing more webinars that would be more like professional developments for me arts educators and for the me arts education community that is supporting this movement. So really appreciate you coming tonight and spending time with us, and I hope that you got a lot out of it. And I definitely want to thank Barbara Liedel for helping us out there, and appreciate her help with this. And Dr. Dempsey, really, we appreciate you being here, and your time and intelligence and creativity as part of this conversation. So really grateful for that.
My pleasure. Anytime.
All right, people, take care and hope to see you next month. We have these sessions monthly, and so next one is going to be November 14th at the same time and place, and we haven't determined what the title for this one is going to be. All right, people, good night. Thank you very much.